You know, it's been a few years now, and I've been vice chair before, and I've been chair before. So, all right, as vice chair, I will call this meeting to order at 3:26 p.m. due to my own lateness. Let us see here. According to the agenda, why don't you go ahead and call the roll so we can reflect the those present and those absent.
That Vice Chair Tom Steller.
Present.
Director Josh Chapman. Here. Director David Moreno. Here. That's all we have. I'm sorry. Participating agency rep from UC Davis, Courtney Doss.
Mm-hmm. And the record will reflect the absence of Director Donna Neville and also our non-voting director, County Supervisor Angel Barajas. And we welcome Heather here today. Thank you, Heather. Oh, Courtney, excuse me. All right, got it wrong. Okay, so we now move on to our agency business. And item 1 is the approval of the agenda and the following consent items. And those items are pretty much routine things, quarterly treasurer's reports, as well as the meeting minutes from January. Anybody wish to take any item off that list? Is there any public comment? There being none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda and the consent items?
So moved.
Thank you. Motion and second to approve the business in item 1, the agenda and consent items. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously by those present. This is time for public comment. Is there anybody in the room today who wishes to address this board on items not otherwise on our agenda? Madam Clerk, nobody? All right, so that concludes public comment and moves us to our more substantive items, beginning with item 3, the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency General Manager Update and Operations Manager. You got some good news for us, Stan? Or
I think we do. I'll start off first and then turn it over to Stan for the capital improvements. So the first item is the usual water supply outlook. The graphic you can see on the screen right now is the 8-station Northern Sierra Index, essentially the watershed for Sacramento River. You're used to seeing this graphic. We show this most of the meetings. So the top of the shaded area is the average over the 30-year average, 1991 to 2020. And then each year, each color is a different year. So the top one, the dark green, is the wettest year on record, 2016, 2017. The one that's just below average, the kind of purple, pink color, I'm not a color guy, is last year's precipitation throughout the day. So then the dark green one kind of in the middle that stops right where it says current, 53.6, that is the current water year up through as of Tuesday this week, or April 14th. And so what it's showing right now is that we're at about 116% of average for this date, but we're also right at 100% for the year. So this is actually a good year, a second year in a row for being optimistic in water supply, and that actually is a good winter so far. That we're right at 100% for the year. Even if it doesn't rain anymore, we're still good. So looking at how that looks for the reservoirs, Lake Oroville is on the screen right now. Similar approach, the top of the shaded area is the average. The horizontal line on top is 100% full. And then the red line in the bottom is drought year 1976-77. And then the green and the blue lines are two different wet years. This darker blue line is the current year average. Right now, Oroville's right around 92% full and
Tim,
still gaining water.
Go on, when does the water year end?
October 1.
So we have a chance to get much better than this at the rate we're going.
Yeah, because Oroville gets a lot of snow melt, so I wouldn't be surprised if they get very close to 100% by the time that they hit their peak later on in May. And then Lake Shasta is pretty similar. Lake Shasta right now is about 96% full and still gaining water also. It gets a little bit less from snowmelt, but it may get close to 99% before it tops out. So it's water storage in the reservoirs is very good. Lake Trinity is also a CVP reservoir, also like in the upper 90% full. So overall water supply, really good. This is a quick look at California snowpack levels. 3 different areas, the northern part of the Sierra, central and southern. The central part is really south of Lake Tahoe, so it doesn't really help us. We're really more northern. So similar approach, the top of the shaded area is the average. And then the kind of the tan brown color in the middle, or like right at average, is 23-24 last year's snowpack. So last year's snowpack was right on average for northern, central, and southern Sierra. This year, the northern part of the Sierra, we're sitting at 102% of average. The central and southern part are below, 81 and 67%. That does matter in terms of when Term 91 curtailment starts because they look at everything flowing through the delta from both the north and the south. So that will negatively impact Term 91 starting. It means it'll start a bit earlier. But overall, I think we're looking really, really good this year. There will not be a Shasta critical year, which means we get the full 10,000 acre feet of our summer water supply. And then I'm thinking with the way things are now, probably the Term 91 curtailment won't start until later part of June. And that's just a complete guess because you can't really calculate it. But that's what I think will happen. And so that means that I think the partners this year will have basically all the water that they need. They'll essentially get full allocation for the second year in a row from the agency. Any questions on that so far?
That snowpack slide is so full of data, it's hard to understand, frankly.
Yeah, we should.
But I'm going to take your word for it. We're in good shape.
We're in good shape. I was thinking maybe we should just do the north one, but the other two kind of do play into when curtailments go into effect. So looking at long-term water supply, this is something that's been on our radar for quite some time because we do have some water supply risks, particularly in winter. In winter months, we've been doing the option agreement with Southside Water District for several years. But we also have a need for a long-term water supply in certain summer months also. Different things going on in the water rights world and upcoming droughts in the future that we need to get something into effect long-term. We have been kind of holding off on this a little bit, primarily because of it's still a bit unclear where the state is going with respect to the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes Agreement or the run-impaired flows. And they haven't yet indicated exactly which way they're going to go yet. No matter what they do, it does negatively impact our water supply to some extent. Healthy Rivers and Landscapes, minor negative impact. Unimpaired flows, it's unimaginably bad impacts to us. So we're starting to work on that. I'm hoping that by the June meeting we have a consultant agreement with ESA to start doing the CEQA modeling for us for that, and then we're working on long-term pricing before we can go back to Southside Water District and how do we put together a long-term agreement. But it is still our intent to do a long-term agreement with Southside Water District for continuing the winter option and then adding us ability in summer months when it's a dry year or if one of the partners wants additional water. There are other opportunities coming. Very, very early in discussion right now and not yet ready for prime time, but there's kind of, I think, a couple of them may be really interesting and they are local. They are Yolo County entities. That there may be a way to work something out. So I'm thinking we may want 2 option agreements for long term. Just to give us some flexibility, both in terms of pricing and one of them may not have water when we need it. So we may want the ability to reach out to more than one group. So more to come on that. Any questions? With that, I will turn it over to Stan.
All right. Thanks, Tim. So, what did you say? Okay. I'm faster than Tim. Let's just be up front. Yeah. So capital improvements, you've seen most of these before. The erosion control project, pretty much done. There is a little bit coming from the parking lot. You can see a rivulet coming down and doing a little bit of erosion, so we'll probably clean that up. Otherwise, pretty buttoned up. Roof access, still working on that. The scissor crane, the one they had originally spec'd didn't quite fit. So we're looking at a different model that might fit the bill for us. So they're still working on that. And then as always, the access to the screens for both cleaning and maintenance. That's more about the bearings and whatnot and greasing those and replacing those as needed and making sure that the Jacobs team can get there safely to do that work. So that's still in process as well. And then out at the plant, we are tracking some smaller capital projects with Jacobs where it's some design efficiencies that they're looking at, mostly on their end, looking at some changes to some of the aspects of processes that have been put in place. And then there's a couple of pieces, such as draining out some electrical conduits, that we had some water intrusion in there, so they're making changes to make sure that doesn't occur and challenge that equipment. And then at this time, we don't have any cost asks for the agency related to those. And then normal slide, ops update, so you can see the flows there for each of the partners in March. Pretty typical. Davis may be a little lower than normal. We are running one of our wells more regular.
I was pretty surprised the difference between what Woodland was taking and what Davis was taking.
Yeah, that's it. Woodland.
Are you guys do you give up water for Lent or something?
It's not for lack of demand, I will say that. But yeah, we use our deep wells. Woodland relies almost 100% on the surface water at this time, and they were adding to ASR as well. So that certainly is about a 4 million gallon difference. So there's your main difference. Aquifer storage and recovery. So that's where you'd put the surface water in the ground and then at need bring it back out. That's a primary aspect of Woodland's water operation. Yep. All contract requirements have been met. Water quality reports posted as usual, and we are under our primary water right, as Tim mentioned, Term 91 not in effect and not anticipated for a bit yet.
Refreshing. Yeah.
Yes, it's nice to have water, yes. A couple other tidbits. So we did our WEA risk and resilience assessment. We completed that. We're in the large category, so that was due by March. That's done. That's where we assess risks, natural and man-made, to the agency's infrastructure and come up with some plans to mitigate those. That's been done. We're working on the emergency response plan updates, which are due in September. And then also the watershed sanitary survey is underway. That's where we join with a number of other agencies and do water sampling in the river and whatnot to understand the water quality. And then the urban water management plan, which is on a 5-year cycle, we'll be working on that come this July.
Do we have any reporting requirements for Homeland Security?
I don't know that we report directly to Homeland Security. The WEA definitely...
Or anything like that?
The WEA definitely covers those types of challenges or those types of risks, but I don't believe we report directly to them. We certainly get information from them on water risks and whatnot. So,
but they don't have leverage over us, do they, in terms of sanctions or anything like that?
I don't know about sanctions, but certainly the regulations that are driven from that affect us. The WEA and looking at cybersecurity is a direct impact from information and regulation that they've put in place.
Ominous. Thank you.
Yeah. Electrical updates. So Jacobs has looked to put more of the electrical equipment spare parts on the shelf based on identification of parts that we had challenges with in the last event. We are still working with them to identify design modifications related to those electrical challenges that we've seen. I will say Jacobs did provide us with an intent to submit an invoice for a portion of cost during the last generator run that we had. We have not received that yet and have obviously not reviewed that yet as a staff, but that will be something to discuss with the board at some point in the future. And then certainly, PG&E and their power supply and potentially modifications that they might be able to make to assist us with the power that's coming in from the transmission is something we're also pursuing as well.
Now, we're on WAPA power, aren't we?
We are, but PG&E is the transmitter of that power. So even though WAPA's...
We're paying the lines, yeah.
Correct. Even though WAPA supplies it to the system, we get the power through PG&E's equipment and subject to their voltage changes and amperage changes.
All right, so the issue is they're transforming their lines adequate to our needs?
Not just the lines, it's more of an entire area system, frankly. So we're at the end of the line there, so that can present challenges. But it's not just the lines coming in, like say from 105 or 102, right? Yeah, it's broader than that in the area.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. DER update. So we've reviewed the design and delivery options with the Jacobs team, including their design build folks. We are moving forward requesting final design from West Yost after some of those discussions, and then next steps on that, we'll keep moving forward. West Yost will, once we get that scope and budget, I don't recall if it was in the budget for this year, but might be, I think it is. Yeah. In the upcoming budget, we have that placed in there, the anticipated budget. And then we're looking at, obviously, a lot of the batteries and other infrastructure have long lead times, so we may be looking to purchase them ahead of the actual construction, doing that on a number of fronts. And then the grant, we did apply for that grant for the battery. However, with the federal government and the changes there, we expect that grant either is going to be delayed or maybe not forthcoming. So
this is all about having battery backup to hold power for
Correct.
need when we are offline without having to turn it on generator.
Correct.
Right?
This would add another potential power source to the facility. Correct.
All right.
And that's all I have for you. Happy to take any questions.
Questions for Stan? All right. Well, thank you for the comprehensive report. All right. That concludes item 3, and that brings us to item 4, which is budget time, right? 25-26 budget overview.
Yes, it's already time for another budget year cycle.
Is this our first look at it or our only look at it?
Our first look at it. So this is just the draft budget, and then we'll refine it and bring it back to the board at the June meeting for adoption.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. So first kind of look at where we are with our budget this year, where we're at, expecting to be at the end of the year versus what was approved at budget last June. So our usual 6 budget categories, the first one being operation and maintenance. We had a $10.4 million approved budget. Right now we're projecting that we're going to spend around $8.5 million. So we're actually planning on coming in roughly $2 million below budget on that. And I'll walk into the reasons of why things are different in the following slides. So the first one is just the numbers. So the second category is O&M and oversight, basically is agency oversight of all operation and maintenance activities. So it's a relatively small budget. We're basically right in line with that. Permits and water supply, we have underspent that one by roughly $500,000. I'll get into that more a bit later. And then agency administration, that's all the agency administrative activity, paying for insurance, Michelle's time, Stan and my time, and other things that we do. So it's a relatively small budget number. We're coming in right in line as expected with that one.
Is that legal too?
Sorry?
Legal?
Yes. Yep, including legal as well. The agency, so the next one is operation contingency. This is one we have in the budget every year. It's basically in case we need contingency funding for something that is unexpected. We have not yet ever used that contingency amount, so that just carries forward year after year. Hopefully we never need to use it. The debt and reserve payment, now this one's interesting. This is the first time that we're actually showing underspending our debt and reserve payments. So I'll talk more about that in a quick second.
Well, that's an impressive reduction.
Yes.
From 23 to 19 something?
Yes.
I mean, as a percentage, that's getting up there to between 20 and 30%, right?
Yeah, I think we're on 15% or so, yeah.
Yeah, it's really good, guys.
Yeah, so I'll walk through kind of the reasons why that is. So under the O&M category, the largest budget
We are a lean and mean operation.
We are. And so a couple of things why we're projecting the operations budget to be about $2 million below what was budgeted. Roughly $1 million of that savings is the electricity. And that's partly because we did switch to WAPA on January 1 this year, so half the budget year is under a new electrical provider. We did not quite know what charges were going to be, so it was a bit conservative. The other overall factor is that we do plan on everybody's water, all the partners' water use for the budget year, and we typically are a bit conservative in that because we don't want to plan for X amount of water use and then use X plus 20%, because that would throw off our budget entirely.
What's worse is X minus 3%.
We're probably at about X minus 3 or 5%.
I mean, your overhead doesn't change generally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the O&M expenses are what we pay Jacobs for operations, what we pay for electricity, and pass through chemicals primarily, and that's by far the largest percentage of that amount. And that's all related directly to how much water that we use. So if we use 10% less water, those costs were all 10%, about 10% lower. So I think we were a bit conservative on the WAPA side of things. That's coming in a bit. Well, in all fairness, we haven't quite yet gotten a real power bill yet, because it does take some time switching over to the new system. They're getting used to us as a new customer. We're getting used to them. So we're we're paying parts of the bill, but not all of it at this point. So we may catch up a little bit on the electricity side by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year. Pass-through chemicals were about $300,000 under what was planned, partly because I think we had some conservatism built in the budget cycle last year because costs have been increasing at a very high rate. They had been increasing 20% or more per year. We used to do annual chemical contracts. Now we do quarterly because they won't guarantee a price for a year anymore. So it's a lot more risk, I guess, involved in chemical pricing than they used to be. So that's kind of the biggest part. Then the next part is we did not spend $125,000 for supplemental water purchase because we did not need to do that this year. The Term 91 curtailment ended in September, did not come back this winter, so we did not exercise our option. The other part was another good thing that we worked out, is we did not spend $310,000 on the joint intake repair project, the erosion repair project that we did. That was always going to be a split cost between the agency and RD 2035. We had budget authority for the agency to take on that project and then RD 2035 to reimburse us for that work. We instead did it the other way. Instead of RD paying us 80%, we do the work at 20% cost and they pay us 80%. RD 2035 actually executed the contract and we paid them 20%. So it shows up on our budget as a large cost savings. At the end result to the partners, there's no real change. But on the budget, at least, it looks like we did not spend $300,000 this year.
Okay.
On the
Those
series,
are phantom savings? Is that what you're saying?
yes,
Okay.
yes. On paper savings. And so the next category, O&M oversight, we're roughly $27,000 below what is budgeted. And that's pretty typical for us. There are several small tasks that are on there as needed and relatively low dollar amount. And some years we don't use them at all. Some years we use parts of them. So that's kind of right where we should be, I feel, on that one. And then water supply and permits series, that one is about $500,000 lower than projected. And that's because we did not start work on the secret document for a long-term water rights agreement yet. So we're planning on hopefully getting that contract in place in June, and then we'll be spending that effort the following year. The next item, that's series 400 for the agency's administration. So that's legal counsel, insurance, our staff time, various other permit fees we have to pay for, that kind of stuff. We're spending roughly $98,000 under budget, primarily because we did not spend as much on legal counsel as we thought, and then the final insurance rate was a bit less than what was expected. Under the 500 series contingency, no change. We have not used it and do not expect to use that contingency.
So this is a mechanical question, but basically this agency is delivering water to its multiple entities. Do you send like a monthly bill to each city and the university for the water that has been delivered to them, and then they pay directly to you? Is this something done monthly?
We do that quarterly. So,
quarterly?
Yeah, when the budget's adopted in June, part of that budget package will have like the anticipated quarterly payment requirements for the three partners.
Do the entities actually pay in advance and then get a credit or have to pay extra? Or do we actually float it for a whole quarter?
No, that's a good question. So the agency does have operating funds in-house. We do have our own funds to pay for things as they come in. We do tend to send the quarterly invoices out at the beginning of the quarter. And then at the end of the year, so this year we'll end up spending a bit less than what our budget was, a bit less than what we obtained from the partners. Typically what we do, it takes about 3 or 4 months after the end of the fiscal year, sometimes a bit longer, to understand, okay, precisely what did we spend that year, and whatever we underspent gets credited back to the partners' invoices the following quarter.
Good.
So usually either quarter 2 or quarter 3, whatever money was not spent is credited back, so the invoices in those quarters ends up being less than what was in the budget.
Does the price that we charge ourselves vary from quarter to quarter based on the expenses of that quarter, or do we set a price for the year? I don't think we've ever voted on a price here at this board, which is why I'm inquiring.
Yeah, it varies by quarter, mainly because of the SRF payments. The agency makes SRF payments in December and June of every year. So the first and third quarter invoices are much higher than the second and fourth. I might have that backwards. It might be the other way around.
The reason I'm asking, as you know, Tim, we are commencing a rate study for Woodland ratepayers. I don't know if Davis is doing that yet or will be.
End of the year.
end of the year. So I'm just kind of wondering if there will be credits or benefits coming to our ratepayers, which are our three entities, based on the kind of budget you're projecting.
Yes, there will be, and I'm about to get to that. So it's
you're
a great
about to get to
segue.
that. I'm your straight man. Start in.
Yes. So some other good news. Looking towards the the draft budget for next year, so we have two main cost categories: our O&M budget, which is everything related to operation and maintenance of the agency's facilities, and then our debt reserve payments. I think in the budget for June, the final budget, it will no longer say debt and reserve payment. It will simply say debt payment. So Woodland made their final reserve payment in December of last year. Mm-hmm. So the reason why we're underspending our debt and reserve payment this year is because Woodland did not make a payment, or is not making a payment in June of this year. Mm-hmm. So that saves, on the City of Woodland side of the SRF loan, about $665,000 a year is no longer being paid in debt service. Mm-hmm. That was, and I probably should explain the reserve payment a little bit. The SRF loans are held by the agency, but they're for the two cities primarily. And when it was set up originally, Woodland is through the Safe Drinking Water Loan, and Davis is through the Clean Water Loan. I might have that backwards. I think that's bad. I think Woodland's Clean Water and Davis is Safe Drinking Water. And to me, they're the same thing, so I kind of forget that. But one of them required, and then Davis's loan required that the reserve payment be funded all up front. So Davis made that 10-year reserve payment at one time when the loan was executed. Woodland had the option to do it over 10 years.
So will Davis get a credit back then for this?
Yeah, I think when we get to the end of the loan payments, our final year is already paid for.
Okay.
Woodland or Davis paid for that up front. Woodland paid for that over 10 years. So when we get to the end, our last year will be, thank you, you completed your loan.
But as far as this, but as far as the reserve payment goes, that is a Woodland payment that's being made. So starting next year, Woodland will not make that payment. So that credit is fully for Woodland.
Oh, I understood. Okay, I'm just trying to understand our situation relative to our ratepayers because I know they care a lot about this.
Yep. Yeah, so on Woodland's side of the agency's budget, going forward, it will be $665,000 lower than it's been for the past 10 years.
At a minimum.
Correct, at a minimum. Yeah, so looking forward to our draft budget for next fiscal year. Operation and maintenance. Again, these are just the numbers, and I'll walk through the detail a little bit in the following slide. So on the O&M budget, currently at 10.43, we're underspending that. Proposed budget is at 13.06 right now, with an increase of 2.63 million. And I'll explain that in a little bit.
Hold on, you're going a little fast for me. My eyes can't focus as fast as you're talking.
So the 100 series, which is all the O&M cost, our current year budget is $10.43 million.
Right. That's quite a jump to 1306.
Yes,
right.
And I'll explain that on the next slide. So it's about 2.63 higher than this year, even though we're coming in right now about $2 million under. The O&M category, O&M oversight category, the Series 200, this year is 0.16 million, proposing a $0.02 million decrease for next year, kind of getting it more in line. We're underspending by $27,000 this year, so we're going to cut the budget $20,000 and try to dial that in a little bit closer. Permits and water supply, we're holding that the same as current year because we are planning to move forward on the long-term water supply agreement for next year. Agency administration, just a little bit higher, same thing, mainly legal costs to support, well, two things, legal costs to support long-term water supply transfer and an increase in insurance rates that we're already aware of. Operation and contingency, the Series 500, no change. That we just carry forward year after year because we tend not to use it. And then the debt and reserve payment, we'll change that to just debt payment. That's dropping by the $664,000 because Woodland's reserve payment is no longer needed. So kind of break down some of the detail a little bit on the O&M budget. I'll start with the good news first. There is about a $900,000 decrease in electricity cost in next year's budget. That is because we will be full year on WAPA power this year at all of our facilities, except for the one offsite facility that we have. But that's minor cost. So essentially, our electricity cost is dropping by nearly $1 million for next year, and that gets fully shared between all three partners. We also reduced the budget by $330,000 because the joint intake erosion control project is completed, so that's not on the budget any longer. The thing that's added is the DER project, the Distributed Energy Resources Project, roughly half the cost for battery backup and the smart controller system. This one, and it also includes final design, $470,000 for final design. And this is something we'll have to work to refine before final budget and probably have a more in-depth discussion with the board before we do that. It's a bit unclear right now what the cost of this equipment may be in the current environment that we're living in. We did ask what has the recent events changed the cost, and we cannot get an answer to that right now. So I don't know that this stuff is all sourced in this country. So we'll work on that. Is the cost hold same, or is there a large cost increase? One of the grants we applied for is on hold, and we applied for a $3 million grant. It is on hold, and all the website simply says it's on hold until further notice. So we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. The next item on the draft budget is the Series 200, the O&M and oversight. We're assuming basically the same, a slight reduction because we haven't used some of these smaller engineering support tasks. We'll cut the budget on that a little bit. Permits and water supply, Series 300. We're keeping that the same because what we didn't do this current fiscal year, we are planning on doing the next fiscal year. And that's primarily the secret document and attorney fees to get a long-term water supply agreement in place.
Every so many years, we have to go through the whole permit process again, don't we? And
Yes.
massive paper and all that. Where are we in that cycle?
A long-term agreement would get us out of doing that for the duration of the agreement.
Or when?
It would be, if we do a long-term agreement for either 10 or 20 years, that would get us out of having to do that work for quite a long time.
So are you proceeding with that now? Or?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we're working with Salcedo Water District, and they're interested in a long-term agreement with us as well. And we will have to do a more in-depth CEQA document for that effort. And then the other piece is how do you work on pricing water during different types of years?
Okay.
So we have to work on a variable. We don't want to pay more in a wet year, and they don't want to sell it for less in a dry year. So we have to figure out how do we handle that in a multi-year agreement. And there's plenty of other examples. We're not reinventing the wheel on that. So that's kind of the two things we're working on, getting started now.
Thank you.
And then, we are the other long-term permit thing we're working on is the Sacramento River Watershed Survey. That's underway. It's been underway for a bit. We started in December. Every 5 years, we have to go through a whole permitting and water chemistry experiment on the river to make sure the water's safe for all of us to take. That's the one we partner with City of Sacramento and West Sacramento and East Bay Mud on that one. And so that's underway now. One thing we did add, we added golden mussels. I don't know if you've seen that in the news lately. Golden mussels in the news, they are very scary for water treatment plants.
Very invasive.
Very invasive, and they can survive with much less calcium in the water for their shells and much less food in the water for them than the zebra mussels and the other ones you're more concerned with. These little guys are far better suited for living in our water system than
How do they get through the fish screen?
They would, their larvae would get through the fish screen.
Pardon me?
Their larvae would get through the fish screen. But what they do is they like to colonize any solid surface, so they would probably first try to clog up our fish screen, but the larvae would get through and then end up in our downstream facilities.
So they're in our treatment plant now?
No.
Oh.
No, they're in the Delta right now.
Oh.
They're in the Delta right now. They did reach a couple of other inland water systems, reservoirs and type things. So that's why some of the news lately, they're not letting boats go to other reservoirs. But what doesn't quite make the news is water treatment plants are very negatively affected by that if it makes it this far north. So we're studying that as part of the watershed sanitary survey. It could be that part of it is they ask us to put some kind of a monitoring station in at our intake to kind of help do these things show up this far north. So far, they haven't made it into the Sacramento River directly yet. They're confined to the Delta and south. But it's probably only a matter of time before they come north. Yeah. But that's a bad one. So that's included in our efforts to try to find out how do we mitigate for that.
I won't ask you what you do when they show up in your treatment plant, because I'm sure Jacobs is on it.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Some of the things that they recommend you do are not compatible with drinking water supply.
Yeah. In other words, you can poison them until you kill them, but you might take the people out with them. Huh?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so that's something that we're studying as a group because, what a port can do is different than what a water treatment plant can do. So we're looking at that now. So the Series 400 agency admin budget is a bit higher, of $94,000 higher than past years, and that's because every 5 years we have to do an urban water management plan update. This is the year we have to do that, beginning in July. DWR will come out with the guidance probably in July, and that's something we have to update every 5 years. The contingency is Series 500, no change. That's going to stay at $410,000. Debt and reserve payment, as I mentioned before, is reduced by the $665,000 reserve payment that we no longer have to do. So the next steps for us is to fine-tune the O&M budget and then bring the final budget to the board for approval at the June meeting. And I think we may want to have a discussion on the DER thing. What do we do in our current environment with that?
Thank you, Tim. Colleagues, you can tell I've asked my questions. Do you have any additional questions? John.
2 quick questions. So if I heard you correctly, the increase in O&M is solely due to the DER stuff?
Yes. Yeah, that's the agency funding roughly half the cost of the DER program.
And then if we decide that it's cost prohibitive to continue in this current environment, does the expenditure of those dollars that we're increasing, would it be spending that money anyway? Like that money, that's not money that we spend it, we decide to pause, and we have to redo that work again 2 years down the road.
Yeah, we would not, if the board decides not to move forward with the project right now, we would not spend that money. It would either not be in the June budget, or we would include it and then just not spend it until the picture gets better.
Okay.
I think potentially the only part we would spend would be the design.
That's what I was,
Yeah,
design.
we'd go to complete design, which I think was a separate item in the presentation. Half mil.
About $470,000 for finishing design.
But the other 3.4 or 3.5, no, we wouldn't spend. And so you potentially either move forward and say we're not going to build in this current environment, but we're going to go ahead and bank the money as WDCWA, right? If the partners, would agree. Or you say we're not going to include that in the budget and we'll just figure that out with the partners after.
Got it.
Yeah.
We currently have about 11 million in reserves.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And do you have a question?
Yeah, just one more.
Second
Sorry.
question,
Yep.
sorry.
And then the last one, when you're looking at your long-term, we're talking about negotiating the lease with Sutter, things like that. What impact, or we do kind of forward-looking into potential development, right, in the jurisdiction? So we have about 3,000 units that'll hopefully get approved and come online in the next handful of years. How do we figure that in, or even potential development when you're looking at these longer-term supply agreements?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So on the supply side, the partners are always looking on their own sides. The cities in UC Davis are like, how much water do they need going forward? Right. So we always look ahead for that. If one partner says, hey, I need an extra 2 million gallons beginning this year going forward, that's fine. We can accommodate that. On the supply side, basically the partners feed into the agency. Stan and I do that for the cities ourselves, so we kind of talk to ourselves a little bit and understand what we need. So we know what we need on the demand side, and so we kind of bring that how much is needed, and then we look on the supply side. Every year is very different. Some years are very dry, some slightly dry, some slightly wet, some really wet, and everything in between. So our water rights, our water right availability changes every year. Right. And so one thing I look out for is usually in 2022, we knew we had a problem right away in January. But usually around March, we have a really good picture of what does the year look like. Like this year, we knew in March, we already had the notification. We have our full 10,000 acre feet this summer. It's looking like snowpack is healthy. We're not terribly worried about Term 91 curtailment affecting our summer water supply that much. Send an indication out to the partners. Things are looking good this year. You should get your full water supply need. In drier years, usually by March we know, and we start talking to each other internally. Okay, we think Woodland has aquifer storage and recovery wells. How much water do they have stored that they can use? How much does each partner think they're going to want to get through the summer? And we all work really collaboratively together to kind of help each other out. And then I go shopping essentially for water leases and water transfers. If we come back and say, well, we think we need 4,000 acre feet this year, I go out and see what I can find and try to get a reasonable price for that water supply. But it's something we typically start early March, depending on how the year's looking, and refine that as we go a bit. But it's definitely a collaborative approach.
Yeah, and if you're looking long term, if you're geared more toward growth in the future, potentially the urban water management plans speak to that, and that's the primary tool we would use as an agency and as the partners to look forward and see when we might need to augment our supply side and or treatment capability. Correct. It's the every 5-year one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, each city has to do an urban water management plan, and then the agency has to do it also, and the agency kind of combines the cities' ones together and adds in UC Davis. UC Davis does not have to do an urban water management plan, which is nice.
I conclude. Thank you. Director Moreno? You're good? Any UC Davis concerns? Just keep the water flowing? All right, we'll do it. All right, thank you. I believe that concludes our discussion of the budget for this meeting. We will be bringing it back to our June meeting, which is Thursday, June 19. We are being asked now at item 5 to consider a resolution approving amendment regarding our financing agreement. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is at a request from the State Water Resources Control Board. This is regarding the City of Woodland SRF loan. City of Woodland has, that's where it is, the Safe Drinking Water State Revolving Fund loan. So the agency's facilities were constructed, or the regional water treatment plant and pipelines were constructed largely through SRF loans. So Woodland has a large loan, Davis has a large loan. Woodland's loan was authorized for about $111 million. We ultimately spent $108 million. So Woodland has a 20-year loan that we're paying to the state at 1.7875% interest over 20 years. The loan document says that is an interest payment that we're making. So we're paying 1.7875% on.
Meaning the principal stays unchanged?
No, the principal is going down. No, we're almost half paid off now. So I think we're probably in the $60 million range of principal remaining. So what the state would like to do is they would like us to recharacterize the word interest and change that to either fee in lieu of interest or charge in lieu of interest. And what it means to them is it gives... We don't care. It doesn't change our permit at all. Okay. It doesn't change our payment at all. It changes nothing for us. For the state, it allows them to use the money differently than how it's originally worded in their SRF program.
Must give them more flexibility.
It does, yes.
Well, then let's do it.
Yep. So they're working on the agreement, and they won't have it completed until sometime in May, but they would like it sent back the day I receive it. So they asked if I could come to the board at this meeting and request authorization to sign the document when we receive it.
All right. There's no downside to this of any kind that we can perceive.
No, there's some upside, is that it provides goodwill with the State Water Board and the SRF group.
Questions, colleagues? Is there any member of the public who's commented on this? No one here in the room? Let's hear a motion.
So moved.
That was dramatic, Josh. And then a second. Thank you, David. All right. Been moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution 2025-01 for the purposes stated, and the staff has presented to us. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Thank you. And that brings us to long-range board calendar.
Yes. So our next meeting is... That's on there. Our next meeting is right now scheduled for June 19th. And we're looking at potentially changing that date.
Oh.
So
you said you wouldn't be there.
Yes, that is right.
It appears some board members
Actually,
might not be eligible.
I'm actually on a business trip in the Netherlands.
yeah, so we'll work to find a date in late June that works for everybody, and try to get the fourth board member here on that day as well. And then, so a couple of things we'll have on that agenda is the final adoption of the budget for next year, and then selection of chair and vice chair for next year, consultant contracts with West Yost and also ESA Associates, and then consideration of the drought protection plan agreement. That's what I was hoping to have today, but we have to do some more in-depth CEQA review before we can adopt that agreement.
All right.
I thought we could just adopt their EIR, and turns out we cannot just simply do that. So that will be in the June meeting. As part of that, though, we would be receiving about $1.1 million. That has to, so we have to keep in mind like how it's supposed to be for some type of drought resiliency project. So we're working through how do we work that into our overall system.
Would June 26th work for staff?
For me, yes.
Colleagues, would you look at your calendars? It works for Director Moreno. Josh is consulting the very complicated calendar. And it works for UC Davis. Good. All right. Well, Madam Clerk, if you'd kindly consult our remaining director and see if that works. Or if it doesn't work, and you can act without me, we stay with the existing date, okay? All right. But I think if you can go to the 27th, if it works for everybody, that would be the best.
Okay.
The 26th, excuse me. Thank you. Yep.
And then the other thing we will likely have, or hopefully have on for the June meeting, is the amendment to the agreement with RD 2035 for joint intake operations. There's about 2 pages in that agreement on how to split the power bill. But now we have our own separate meter at the intake. And so we have to modify and actually simplify that language, because we're not splitting one bill anymore. We have 2 separate bills. So we have to kind of modify the language a little bit. To do that, we need to understand a couple of things about how power is routed through the facility, and we're still working that out. So hopefully by June we have that worked out.
Great. Your kilowatts, my kilowatts, and our kilowatts, right?
Yeah, it relates to, because RD 2035's pumps are on a separate circuit and separate meter.
Yeah.
Our pumps are on a separate circuit and separate meter. But we have common facilities like the screen cleaner and the lights. Mm-hmm. We're trying to figure out whose bill do those show up on. Because one of us will be paying the other a little bit of money for keeping the lights on in the building.
Is that aspect of it separately metered also?
No, it's on one of the two.
It's on one of the 2 circuits, and you don't at this moment know which one.
Correct.
Okay, well, we'll hear about that one
Yes.
in due course. Okay.
And you'll be adding the DER piece to either June or September?
I think that could be a separate one, or it could be part of the adoption of the budget as well.
Great.
I think we'd include it in that item. Yeah.
Thank you.
That conclude the long-range calendar?
Yes.
Thank you. And now we're at item 7, board member comments. Everybody's happy. I haven't got any either. And that means we adjourn to our next meeting at a date yet to be determined, and will be reported to everyone in due course. And we are adjourned with, again, my apologies that I required you to be here when I couldn't be here. Thank you.